All right. Questions on Noah after the flood. And I will take 15 minutes. When we get there, I will stop. Yeah, we can go to 3:30. So maybe I'll take 10 minutes for questions. Questions on that? Yes, go ahead, Ricky.
Something to note. Is this starting over and being with each other, is it forecasting of how we ought to be with each other? Meaning, we are all flawed. So being with each other, not with an aim to support each other in sin, but be with each other knowing that we are flawed.
Right. So I think God models for us patience and forgiveness. And there's that passage in Colossians. I think there's a passage as well in Ephesians where one of them says, bear with one another as Christ forgave you or God forgave you. There's a parallel between what Jesus does and us. And so I think you're definitely onto something. And the idea of God even remembering Noah, the idea there is that God remembers him relationally. It's not that God forgets about all of humankind's sin, but God decides that he's not going to hold a grudge. And that's a picture of how we're to deal with each other. It's not that when I forgive you, I'm going to forget what you've done, but I'm going to make a decision relationally to not allow that to prevent me from relating with you and going forward. So yes, absolutely. God wants us to follow the model that he has set. But I think the big point is this is the nature of God, which is important. I was kind of being light about it earlier, but I don't know how to start another day if God is not a God of do-overs. How do I? Because I have so many weaknesses. And the older you grow as a Christian is the more you are aware of them. And so the only thing that enables us to keep going is the nature of God, that he will start over with us. That's big. That's big. It's major. Don't lose that. And then we have to model it with other people, just like you say. That's a big point. That's how we teach people what God is like. We've got to do that with our kids. Sometimes we tell them the same story over and over and over again. Remember when you did the so-and-so? Don't do that again. And they're thinking in the back of their head, my God, when am I going to get to live that down? You guys are getting quiet. Maybe you've done that. I do it from time to time. We are to be like God. Yeah, thanks for that, Ricky. Yes, go ahead, Hanif.
Isn't it a little bit odd that it was Canaan who got cursed?
Yes.
And with the blessing, it was Japheth and Shem?
Yes, right. So, as I said earlier, I think a big part of what is going on with Canaan, and there are lots of questions about it, is that he is the son of Ham,
right,
and Ham sins against his father.
Right.
So the curse comes to him through his son. So it is a reciprocation of his sin against his father. He is dishonoring his dad,
right, and
dishonor is coming to him through his son.
Yeah, but then in a way, then Canaan kind of innocent in a way, so because I understand, but Canaan got something that he didn't partake in.
Right. So I don't think we're to read these curses as you just get cursed and no matter whether you're good or not, you just get cursed. One of the first things we have to understand is the nature of the relationship between a parent and a child is a parent's choices quite often affect a child. It may not affect the child in terms of their moral standing with God. Okay? If I'm an alcoholic and I drink out all of the money and we lose our house and all kind of something, my children are going to suffer. That does not mean that God is going to say, you're an alcoholic too. But the reality is my choices are going to affect them. So that's part of what is going on. But I'm coming 1 second, Shelly. But the other part of it is that when we get to Canaan, because I think it ultimately points to the nation of Canaan, when we get there, there's no question that they're in on the act too and sinning. Yeah? I'm going to come to the second part what's the second part again?
With the blessing going on.
Yeah, so he blesses Shem and Japheth. Now Shem is not the firstborn. This is God again choosing. God don't follow the script. He blesses who he wants to bless. But But Japheth, because him and his brother do the right thing. There's an actual epic in the Mesopotamian region where they say a son who finds his father drunk is to take him by the hand and lead him.
Right.
And so they do the right thing, and so they are blessed. Yes, Shelley.
Now, I was just commenting on what Hanif said.
Yes.
Is that to me it's a worse punishment for him.
Yes.
That his sin fall on his son.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, when you sin, it's like, all right, God, you can punish me, but don't punish my child. It's like, it's
Yeah.
worse as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. But isn't that what tends to happen with our sin? There are ways in which we don't even realize that our sin affects our kids, but it does. So I think that's what's going on there. Yes, Pat. And then.
Yes, Courtney. What I want to ask is that is within the black race, what knowing that the curse come from that generation up till today.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good question because
Everybody's
that
saying
is
it.
something that has actually been taught, and it's an abominable teaching, and it's also incorrect. It's born out of racism and to support slavery. That's where it comes from. It's not just abominable, it's evil. When you look at the descendants of Ham, and you'll see a map a little bit later, it's not confined to Africa at all. There are parts of Africa, but they are not, it's not all of Africa. And it includes places like Canaan, where not Africans would have dwelt. And in fact, the curse does fall on Canaan and not on Ham. And so the curse, if we were to read that, it would point to a different ethnic group. But we're not pointing to a different ethnic group because that's not the point. It's not about ethnicity. It really is about God bringing a curse, which has nothing to do with skin pigmentation or race. It has to do with the consequences that certain nations face down the line as a result of Ham's sin. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. Sorry, I was a little bit strong on that, but no, actually, I'm not sorry. Yes, go ahead, Angie.
Okay, so this is a story that I struggle with sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, as a parent, your kids do wrong, you want to correct them, you even punish them, and you want to discipline them. But to curse them, this just seems a bit strong, and I can't understand why Noah would do that to his own child, and it seems like it's a curse to forever. You know, it doesn't even seem like it's something consistent with the nature of God. You know, forgiveness and all of that. Don't seem to be any room for even redemption, that kind of curse. So as a parent, I don't understand it.
Right, yeah. And that's a reasonable response. I would say that you have to remember this is a different culture and context. And in that culture and context, one of the worst things that you could do is to dishonor your parent. This is an honor-shame society, which means that there's a fixed amount of honor. And if you shame me, you gain honor at my expense, right? And so how they would respond to the dishonor of a father in a patriarchal society is very different than how we would respond. And so that's why we would not consider this to be a great offense. The other thing that I would say is that we have to remember the context of the story. What we really have here is an explanation for the Canaanites and why ultimately they are dealt with in the way that they are dealt with by God. Now, that ultimately is not because of what Ham did. That ultimately is because of what they did. I've been to Megiddo, that's a city in Canaan, where they have unearthed actual remains that go all the way back to the pre-Israelite period when it would have been occupied by Canaanites. And they found skeletons of small infants who were sacrificed to their gods. That ultimately, that's one example, and there are many more. That ultimately is why God brings judgment on them. So what we have is a story that's telling us something about the Canaanites, but that's not the ultimate reason why they are judged. They're judged because of how they sin against God. You know? That's the best I could do with that. So I guess I would just caution us against reading these texts in a way that just relates to our context and our culture. We really have to work hard, to understand the Bible, because it's a different world. And part of the challenge that we face is that we're trying to read it with our 21st century lens. We can't do that. We have to take the time, and they perhaps are more, I'm just giving you that from kind of off the top of my head, but we have to do the hard work of trying to enter into the world of the text and what it's trying to communicate based on its culture, and not just read it from our 21st century point of view. But yes, there are difficult texts in the Old Testament, and part of it is the distance between us and them. There's some that are even more difficult than that. So if anyone tells you, yeah man, all the Bible is easy to read, you know that's not true. There are parts of it we have to really work at.